Today on Filmmaker Friday, we're going to be talking to Hilda Burke from Angel Eyes Photography, all about how a videographer and a photographer can work seamlessly together on a wedding day. Hey everybody, my name's Jason from Night Owls Media and For Love Films, and today I am graced with the amazing photographer Hilda Burke from Angel Eyes Photography. So what I'd like to go over today is how to get along with a photographer, especially someone that you've never worked with. Now, Hilda and I have worked together a lot of weddings, but I'll always work with someone new here and there that I've never worked with, that I've never heard of before. I'd like to go through the process of how you work with a videographer to make sure that the day goes smoothly.
Usually before even I show up on the wedding day, I reach out to them and send them an email and ask them how many there are on his team or her team, so I kind of mentally know how to plan, because I know if it's a whole cinematography team and there's 4 people and 8 cameras, then my job is going to be a lot harder versus 1 or 2. I also ask them what their style is, if they're directing a lot or they're more just shooting what's happening. And then the day of, I actually check in with them again, introduce myself, ask them where they're going to put their tripods and so on, and where they're going to be. The ceremony is the most stressful part because you don't want to miss anything. So I double and triple check with everybody.
So the first thing you got to do is reach out to your other vendors. And especially as a videographer, I think it's most important for the videographer to reach out to the planner, the photographer, and the DJ. These are going to be your best friends for the wedding day. And your photographer and you are going to be hip and hip almost the entire day. So it's very important to reach out to them before the wedding day, introduce yourself, ask the questions. What I always like to do is I always like to go to their websites, the photographers' websites, and I look through their stuff and I find a few images that I really like. And when I first introduce myself to the photographer, I'll say, hey, I really love that one photo you did with the couple on the bridge. It was really pretty, like the symmetry was really good.
Dude, that's really smart.
I don't do it just to do it.
Okay.
I actually find an image that I think is strong. And I compliment them what I think is strong about it. So when you get to the wedding day, when you get into the prep, or however when you start, make sure you introduce yourself again. And having that communication beforehand really makes it that much smoother.
Yes.
And then working with them and having an open conversation, being like, okay, so what do you need now? Do you need to get the dress? And then maybe get the dress together or in a similar area. Because then if one person wants to bring the dress outside or to a completely separate location, then you don't have to do it twice.
And all the years of working with videographers, I learned that your lighting and your setup for detail shots and where people get dressed is a lot more cumbersome, because sometimes you have to set up lights and you know, like some videographers like the window, some don't like the window, some want to do like, you know, silhouette or backlighting, some don't. So I asked them ahead of time where they want the bride to be dressed or where they want the detail shots, because I can use a flash or, you know, fill-in light or whatever. It's easier for me to travel around them than for them to travel around me, especially in a small hotel space like with a bunch of bridesmaids and makeup artists. The only thing that bothers me if they get in my shot, you know, so aside from that, I really don't care.
So you bring up an awesome point. Don't get in each other's shot. Having that communication is going to nip that in the bud right in the beginning. Having that communication going into the ceremony, I think, is one of the most stressful parts for any of us, because that is the real heart of the day. That is what the couple's dreams have been building to, especially like during the vows. Because this is the shining moment of the couple. So what I always say when Hilda and I work together, I always like to ask her, where are you going to be for the vows, for the rings, for the kiss? And because we're talking to each other, I know she's going to be at a certain spot in the aisle, in the middle of the aisle, and that I know I can get right next to her and shoot a very similar shot, so we're not in each other's way. When you're working with a videographer, what do you like? How do you like to approach that?
Before we get to the ceremony, I want to make sure that we're not shooting each other for the bride handoff. Because sometimes if he stands, you know, like next to the groom and I'm panning around to get the groom's reaction and the bride coming down the aisle.
And you get a nice shot of the videographer.
Yes.
Not something they want to remember on their wedding day.
So I always make sure that we're on the same side, even if I have to switch sides to accommodate them. I'm fine with that. I just want to see both the bride and the groom. Then I ask them, where are you going immediately after? Do you have a stationary? Where's your stationary so I don't walk in front of them?
Right.
Are you moving around?
Again, that's the one thing I always like to talk to you about.
Right.
It's like, here are my camera locations.
Right, because if you have a slider and I go all the way to the back of the church to get that epic shot for myself, I'm either photoshopping out that slider
Right.
or I'm cussing at you, or something.
So how do you like to work with a videographer during the creative session?
I ask them what their style is. I ask them if they want to direct or they want to take turns directing or if I should direct, so I go from there. Because if they're giving great direction, all I got to do is shoot it. So they're making my life easy. If they want to give me the green light and I'm just directing and they're shooting, then we're fine. But if we both have our own plans about he needs an hour.
When I work with you, it's a back and forth. I say, hey, you pose them, you do your shots. I would like to have them walking after this and take some creative after this. And then I'm shooting while she's posing them. I'm still shooting them and vice versa. She's also shooting and getting her stuff. So we're getting the same amount of work.
And working with you, I learned that cinematographers and videographers love anything that's moving.
Yeah,
It's
we love motion.
So even when I pose a couple in a spot, I'm like, okay, now you walk towards me because I know that you like the wind blowing the veil and anything
I'm sorry,
that's
is there
moving.
anything prettier than that?
No, there's
No.
nothing prettier. And that's when we ask Carol to move the veil if there's no wind.
An assistant. Oh my God,
Yes.
get an assistant.
Yes.
They are worth their weight in gold.
Yes.
Yeah, they'll move their stuff, but then they can whip the veil up in the
Yeah,
air and make
yeah.
magic happen.
Unless they're on a swing, in that case, it's a chore.
It came out so pretty though.
Oh my God.
Jason, make sure you cut too.
Now you gotta lean back. Okay, ready, Hilda?
Do that. Okay, good. Stay there, stay there. Just keep looking at it. Yes. Looks like you're pulling.
Wait. You gotta walk with it. You're at full extension. No. Nope. That's in the memories forever now.
And this, when I pull her off. Oops. But wait, you skipped too far ahead because a critical part for me is when I do the family formals.
Please tell me about family formals.
Usually it happens after the ceremony or just before, and that's a must for every couple, every family, that they want the family formals. So I hope that during that time video is hands off because that's the only time I have to get those family shots that everybody wants. Videographer decides that now is the time to do everybody go woohoo in the church, and I'm like, we don't have time for woohoo in the church,
Yeah.
We can do woohoo later, let's just get this done.
A videographer, we should really be hands off during that time. Maybe at the very end, like sometimes I like getting the bride and groom at the very end as they're
Yes.
walking out of the church, but I don't dip my toes in that
Yes.
pool.
And I always do like a kissing shot and walking out
Right,
if we have
right.
time, and I know you guys like that, and I know that like walking towards the church door or away from the altar or vice
love
versa.
those.
I know, me too. If we have time to spare, I am all
Rock
about
it.
doing anything creative,
But give your photographer
yes,
that time.
that's critical.
Before we get into the actual reception, let's talk about what we got to do before the reception. We are running around getting room shots. We're
Yep.
getting details,
Yep.
things like that.
And that's why I usually like to check to see what the plan is with the video, because if they have their beautiful video lights set up for room shots, I don't need to worry about my lights or my setup. I
It's
can
less
just
work.
take advantage of
Yeah.
it. And I love video lights. I usually bring video lights for room shots if there's no videographer that day.
Make sure you communicate during your detail session about where you want to go, what kind of lights you're going to be using, but also to start pre-planning where you're going to be for the reception. Find out where the grand entrance is happening and where your cameras are going to be set up, because there's nothing worse than backing up into a camera or into another person who just wasn't paying attention, because we are so focused on them coming in. We're not, we're kind of horse blinded. So for toasts, I think most videographers, at least in my history, we stay put.
Okay.
We plant a tripod
Okay.
and we get a nice shot, and then we get
Okay.
another shot of the reactions.
Yep.
What would be some advice or some faux pas that you've seen?
Sometimes if they have like an actual long head table or even a small one, if they put a tripod in the middle of the floor, then I can't,
Yeah.
I don't have any flexibility.
I've been guilty of that.
Yeah.
I've done that in the past, and I never realized it was an issue until I had a photographer say, look, it looks bad.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm getting a good shot of the bride and groom, but to the rest of the room and for the photographer, we are the villain in this part.
Yeah,
So
because we're looking at the bride and the groom, and so are the guests.
Bingo.
So if there's a giant tripod in the middle, yes, you're getting great shots, but
at
you could
what cost?
even if you just move it back a little bit with a longer lens, because we're shooting with a 70 to 200 or 85 usually for the speeches. Yeah,
right.
Because I don't want to be in the middle of the floor getting up in their face. You shouldn't be either. It's about them and what's going on.
Their time.
Yes.
And you should never be, again, you shouldn't be in their face at that time, because that is a emotional moment between some of their best friends in their life and, the love of their life sitting right next to them. What about first dance?
I usually like to ask what kind of lighting the videographer using, if any, and if there's video lights set up, I'm super happy because I can either turn off my flash or just use it very rarely depending on how they're turning and what they're doing.
What are some things that bother you working with a videographer during the first dance?
If they get on the dance floor with the couple and they have like a handheld something and they run circles around them the entire 1 or 2 or 3, it's fine, but not during the entire time. It's too distracting. It's about them. You're not supposed to be the third party in the first dance that just makes circles around them for 2.5, 3 minutes. And anytime that I know that your team like crosses in front of me, you'll say crossing.
Right.
So that helps a lot. So I appreciate that.
I've had photographers in the past like touch me on the shoulder and then walk by. I think that's fantastic. I say the one thing, don't try to dip. Don't try to go under someone's camera.
Why?
Because that looks awkward. If you just walk by, it's a silhouette walking by the camera, and it can be anyone. And if I use it, fantastic. If I don't, I don't.
Okay.
But if you try and dip,
I
you
always
see someone
dip.
dip,
I didn't
and
know
a lot of the
that.
times, people will look up into the lens to see if they're low enough, and it just looks awkward. So
I've done that, I'm sorry.
Just walk by.
Okay, just walk by.
Just walk
Okay,
by.
good tip.
If you can, walk behind someone, but just walk in front.
Okay, good tip.
But don't stand.
Definitely not standing, yes.
And photographers, I'm sorry to point you guys out, but please have spatial awareness of where our cameras are. So the last thing about the reception, but if there's any kind of end of the night event like a sparkler exit or, hey, there's this beautiful piano, let's go take shots in front of the piano.
Or sometimes there's a sunset that I like to pull them out for.
Sunset's perfect
Do you
because
want
it's
to
a time frame.
join? Do
Yes.
you usually prefer to? I usually give everybody the heads up. I give the DJ the heads up. I give the videographer, the venue manager to make sure she's not bringing out the cake then or something. Yeah.
So number one rule, communicate.
Communicate.
Talk to your photographer. Hey, if you have an idea for something, get them on board and then kind of find a time frame in there. But also remember, this is your couple's day. The more you take them away from this awesome party that they planned, the more they're going to feel like they're missing out. So have like a set area with like, oh, this sunset's going to be really nice. And on the way back, get some shots on the way back in. And then let them go. Getting video and photo of them having a good time, way more important.
Yes.
So any last tips or advice working with a videographer?
Communication and constant communication.
Throughout the day,
Throughout the whole day. You know, is this okay? Am I in your way? Do you need anything? Just basically don't be an asshole. You know, that's all you have. And remember that it's not about us. It's about the couple that we're working for. So yeah, just be a nice person.
Hilda, thank you so much for joining
pleasure.
me today. This has been enlightening, and I feel like I'm going to be better. I'm going to be a better videographer because of this.
I don't know if that's possible, but okay.
That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us for Filmmaker Fridays. Again, we were graced by the amazing photographer Hilda Burke of Angel Eyes Photography and For Love Films. Down in the comments, I want to know what is the number one thing that stresses you out about working with other vendors, especially a photographer, or what makes you excited about working with a photographer. I want to know your thoughts. In the meantime, be better, do something awesome today.
And I'm like, we don't have time for woohoo in the church, you know, we can do woohoo later.